What is up, my friends? Welcome to another episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. As you can see behind me, we are in the middle of a ice storm. Even though it's the middle of February and I'm absolutely freezing right now, it should be a lot warmer, but I'm not going to dwell on it. Hopefully the weather will improve soon and I will not be freezing while I will be filming these videos, because when I'm this cold, it's trouble to talk and my mouth gets locked. But anyways, what I really wanted to talk about today was something that is near and dear to my heart. And this is when I see people with absolutely terrible product descriptions on their e-commerce stores. This is kind of a big pain point with me, and I really want to help you improve that if you run an e-commerce store. Because look, you can have the most beautiful store in the world, and maybe it has awesome design, maybe an awesome logo, but the messaging that you use to communicate with your customers is way off. And one of the biggest things I see is that when you write your product descriptions, it's too logical. It talks about all the dimensions of the product and what it's made of and all this logical information, what color it is, where the materials are from, but it doesn't really hit a nerve, and it doesn't really talk about the emotion behind the product, okay? And this is something that you really have to do with your products. Like, you have to make these very unique product descriptions that really touch the heartstrings of people, right? And I'll give you the perfect example, all right? So maybe you've seen Seinfeld before. It was definitely one of my favorite shows growing up, and there was this character, Elaine. So she actually worked for this company called the J. Peterman Catalog, or the J. Peterman Company, but she was a copywriter for the J. Peterman Catalog, and she would essentially write product descriptions. And I would just do a quick Google search right now and you'll see these products have some of the best freaking descriptions you've ever seen, all right? So when you're writing your product descriptions, I would recommend using that as a free resource to sort of give yourself an idea as to what a really good product description looks like. But one episode, she's basically given the task to write this product description for these Himalayan walking boots, okay? So she's getting very stressed because she can't actually get the product description out, and there's a bunch of other things with the episode that happen to her that are very bad. But what essentially ends up happening is that she's like walking home late at night, right? She's like, oh man, I've been down the street like 1,000 times, but it just doesn't look like the same street. It's rainy, it's gloomy, all the people around here are very sad looking, and in the distance I can hear a child screaming. Oh, and my mascara is running down my face. And, oh, my back aches. Oh, my back aches. My heart aches. But my feet are glorious. Thank God I wore my Himalayan walking shoes. Yes. And she has that epiphany moment, right? And you can see even a quick description like that, it really just pulls at the heartstrings, right? Like, you feel for her because she's in a lot of pain as a person, and it's really getting emotional, right? And one thing you'll notice is that people do not buy with logic, they buy with emotion, and they backwards rationalize their purchases with logic. Okay, this is very big, right? So when you're writing your product descriptions, it's totally cool to have obviously all the features and benefits, but you want to become a storyteller behind your products. All right, this is very important because people love stories, right? If you can go back to the beginning of time, all these religious stories, all this mythology that you hear of, even now, like Marvel Studios and all these comics that they have and all these huge epic movies that they have, right? Like, the story is always what sells the stuff. It's not necessarily like the logic. Like, I'm sure some of these movies that you see, for example, like, I don't know, like Black Panther, like it'd be okay and you'd sort of be interested in if it had some stuff, but when you really have a good story and it's really pulling at the heartstrings and it's very emotional, like, people are going to resonate that with a lot more than just the logic behind it, okay? And so, like I said, when you're actually out there and you're coming up with your product descriptions, I would just recommend, like, really having a really good story, making it emotional. I'll give you a couple of free resources that I really recommend reading, because this is going to help you improve your copywriting skills when it comes to product descriptions, and otherwise just all sorts of other messaging on your store, maybe your emails and maybe your sales letters, just any sort of copywriting you're doing. So the first tool I would recommend, or the first free resource I would recommend, there is a book you can actually download for free because it's available on the public domain, and it is a book called Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. He's one of the most famous advertisers of all time, and I would recommend reading this book a few times because the main point that I got behind it was that people are very, very, very selfish, right? They don't care about you and your company and what you're really about. They just care about themselves. So when you can create these stories based on what resonates with them and what they care about, they're more likely to buy from you. And you may disagree with that, but it's absolutely true. It's a huge part of human psychology is that people are very selfish. The next resource that I would recommend is the GaryHalbertLetter.com. Gary Halbert is considered the godfather of marketing and one of the main copywriters, if not the best copywriters of all time. So he has this free letter, and it has the archives of all of his old newsletters. And it essentially just goes through step by step, or it goes through newsletter by newsletter, and you can read each of these articles. And there's one on the offers that I would highly recommend you check out. Off the top of my head, I think it's called Why I'm the Greatest Copywriter Alive, even better than all the other guys out there, something like that. And it really just breaks down how to write a very good and compelling offer that makes people want to bust out their credit card and just pay you and just give you all of their money right away. It's a very good article, so I highly recommend you reading that out. And he has a book called The Boron Letters. You can also order that as well. And it's a series of letters that he wrote to his son while he was in prison. And one of the main things is that when you're writing copy, you really just want to sort of write it to a close friend of yours, right? Like you don't want to think of it as the customer you're writing it to. So I remember after reading The Boron Letters, I was like, okay, it makes sense. Like you want to write all of your sales copy to someone that's close to you as if they were your friend or family member, and then that will resonate with people, right? Because when you're writing it from that perspective, when they read it, they're gonna be like, damn, like this person knows me, like they totally understand my needs and my wants. So that's really gonna help you out as well. Another resource or a book I would also recommend, and I'll put the link to all this stuff in the description below, is Confessions of an Advertising Man by David Ogilvy. He was a huge English advertiser. He owned a massive, I think his advertising agency actually still exists out there, but he talked a lot about how he would get clients and how he would write copy, and he gives us a lot of other suggestions. I think he was the first one that brought the book Scientific Advertising to my attention, and I read it about 4 or 5 times at this point. I plan to read it again just because it's such a good freaking thing. But that book as well, if you're planning on starting a marketing agency, you just really want to know more about advertising, I would also recommend that because that's also a really good free resource that is available, and it's only I think like 20-25 bucks, something like that. So I'm sure you'd get a lot of value out of that regardless. But there's a lot of other free tools out there, obviously, for writing stuff. There's a really good book that I also use when I go and write copy, and it's called Words That Sell. And it just really gives you something. It's like you can go out there and you can try and write some copy, but I'm sure you've had that problem even when you're writing anything. When you go to write a letter and you just see that little cursor and that little thing like flicking on and on and on, and you don't know what to write, this thing will actually give you some ideas as to how you can start writing your copy. And it just really gives a lot of power words, and it gives a lot of examples on different things that you're writing. Like if you're writing features and benefits, it can help you really just write the bullet points a lot faster and really just write certain offers a lot better. So I totally recommend that as well if you want some tips on how to improve your copywriting. But that's really just what I want to talk about from now. And yeah, you should really, like I said, try and write your product descriptions based on what your customer wants, tell a story, and make it emotional. On that note, I am freezing. My hands are virtually frostbitten at this point, and I'm going to go watch game number 2 of the Leafs game. And yeah, they're going to beat the Boston Bruins tonight. And yeah, I will see you next time on another episode of the Underground Marketing Conspiracy. Go Leafs, go.